welcome back to another edition of the award-winning teissTalk with me, your host, Jenny Radcliffe. We've got a great show for you today. Later, I'll be inviting an awesome panel to discuss the CISO vendor relationship. We're going to be joined by Sajid Naseem, who's the CISO at New Jersey Courts, and by Todd Carroll, who's the CISO, amongst other things, at Cyber Angel. Don't forget that all of you can ask questions or chat in the right of the box to me and to our amazing panelists. So without further ado, and don't forget, sorry, I knew there was something else. Don't forget that the teissTalk mug is going for whoever is the most engaged, the most intelligent comment, the funniest remark. You will win a teissTalk mug. But first, I am delighted to be joined by my lead guest today. Lida Muller is the CISO at Stanford University and has worked that job for a number of years. I am delighted to welcome her to the show. Welcome to the show, Lida Muller.
Hi, thank you very much for having me this morning or this afternoon, wherever you may be.
This afternoon, yeah. Oh, God, and you know, we're Brits and we can't deal with the heat. We can't deal with the heat. So, look, welcome to the show, Lida. I mean, honestly, what a distinguished career. Many things to talk about today. But first of all, maybe you could just let our lovely audience who helped us win our award tell us a little bit about what you do at Stanford.
Sure. I'm the CISO at Stanford University, Residential and Dining Enterprises. We are an auxiliary where we're the revenue generating arm at Stanford, where we house the students, feed the students. We have a hotel. We manage the concessions at the stadium. So we have a wide variety of people within our community, everywhere from custodians to project managers to C-suite. So lots going on with data, information, security, PCI.
It must be massive, a stadium and a hotel. I mean, obviously, I know Ivy League is huge. Like, that surprises me. You have a stadium.
Yeah, stadium. We manage the concessions. That's where the football games are, and the basketball games. So it's basically a city within a city. I mean, anything that you can think of that happens at the university happens there.
Do you know, I've got friends who are CISOs at universities or have been in some capacity in security and education in the UK, and they've told me that from a perimeter perspective, it's a really hard thing to keep secure. Is that true of cyber as well?
Yeah, I would say so, because we have so many different roles and so many people touching different things. Like, we're not like, for example, a tech company where you have basically your engineers, your programmers, a lot of people doing kind of the same sorts of things, working within the same applications. We have so many different people using so many different applications, sharing data with one another in different departments. So it really is a big perimeter. It really, really is.
It must be crackers though, because you must be doing that all the time. Anyway, I just think, like, of all the CISOs I know that are kept awake at night, the ones in education who have to look after that kind of thing seem to have the hardest time sleeping. So, I mean, you've been in that job for many years. I mean, you know, in the 20 years you've been at Stanford, you've done lots of different jobs. I wonder, but I'm more interested really in the fact that you've been in the industry for so long. What are the sort of changes that you're seeing, good or bad, over that kind of career?
Wow, I would say technology, the Internet of Things, data, information, and how people do their jobs. Where in the past, I'll give an example of a custodian, right? They basically, their job is to keep things clean, keep things organized. They deal with chemicals. And it used to be they used to get information on paper, right? They'd read the paper of how to handle the chemical, of how to clean the rooms. Now we've put technology into their hands. We've given them iPads or iPhones or tablets to read those sheets, to get that information. So now they're connected to the network, to get that just-in-time information. So I think what I've seen is information has moved more quickly. People are getting information faster, and they're getting it in their hands, and they have information to a lot more things, unless it's controlled of what they can see. So I would say that faster information, and this goes to IoT and IOB, that the information that they're getting in a timely manner, and is that information that they have access to the correct information that they need.
Wow. I mean, I can imagine that. Such a difficult thing to control whilst trying to make sure people are happy and don't feel so restricted. It must be crazy.
Right.
I mean, You've been in this industry a long time, and I'm going to speak to you
Mhm.
a little bit later about a couple of your passions because they're mine as well. And you're so
Mhm.
awesome about these things, and you hold stewardships and the sort of non-exec directorships and things like that, but and
Mhm.
trusteeships.
Mhm.
But I wondered, after all this time, are you still? Does the industry still excite you, or do you feel sort of tired by some of the challenges that are going?
I'm excited about it. I'm passionate about it because I'm more of the people person. Through my career, I came up the people side, and technology. That interception has happened, and I want to help educate people of all different roles within organizations. I know we say that people are the weakest link, but I think they're part of the solution.
Mm,
If we
mm,
they need to be educated and aware, and when you bring technology and data and information to how does it affect them in their day to day, they understand, right?
mm,
They're not. It's not that they're clueless about it, they're just not exposed to it. They just don't
mm.
understand because they have a job to do, but now technology and data is affecting them, and we just need to be able to talk to them and explain them, understand their role, and how we can, technology and what they do succinctly, and work together. And I think that will help improve what they're doing and be able to support them and move what they're trying to accomplish, moving forward.
I couldn't agree more, and I think I think that phrase, the weakest link, it's so counterproductive. It's so helpful because if no one knows anything about security and the human side of things, I mean, I have talks called the weakest link and question mark, and it's helpful to get people
Mhm.
across where we're going, but it's unhelpful, isn't it? Because it's how criminals see people. That's what I always say,
Mhm. Mhm.
and they're part of that defense as well. I completely agree. We've
Mhm.
got comments already in the chat from one of our regulars. That's Professor Danny Dresner, he's prof, saying technology plus people equals system.
It's
Saying
true. I
three
like
word,
that. Yeah.
3 words, and he gets us across. So I mean,
Mhm.
I think that's true, and I think you're famous really for saying this. You say this in a lot of your talks, a lot of your interviews about security kind of being everybody's problem, and I completely agree with you. I do on this, but um, I think when we went to working from home en masse, it also became everybody's worry. I mean, I'm joking with you, what keeps you awake at night, but we
Yeah.
actually did an episode on teissTalk about how do we teach people to be the CISO of their own homes. I mean, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that when we set everyone home and expected them to be across these things?
Right. We had a lot of people that are in my organization that what we would considering essential workers. They were facility managers, property managers, and these are the people that take care of the buildings. And usually they're on site, checking are the pipes broken, or how what type of shape is the building. But they went home. They
Mm,
were working, on their applications on their laptop. And what we did see was, the websites that they were going to, because we were looking for a lot of PPEs and a lot of other
yeah.
things. We saw that they were going to a lot of, websites that were not very friendly websites. So it was very interesting because we could see that pattern over years of, how, and I hate to call the wave, but the wave was going up in March,
Mm,
even on the web. We had the pandemic going on, waves were going up, but they were also going up on websites that the people were visiting.
mm,
And so we were helping educate, our users. Okay, now you're on your home network. What do you need to do? What are the tools and solutions that we have in place to make you more secure? So it was,
mm,
again, the re-education and the collaboration tools. There are a lot more collaboration tools where it used to be easier for some of these, staff members that were on site. They could just run to the next building and go talk to somebody. Well,
yeah.
now they needed to use collaboration tools on their system, on their laptop, to be able to have that same conversation. So it's walking them through how to use those tools. Even though we did train them years ago on how to use the tools, they weren't using it, right? The
But
trainings did happen, but they
mm,
weren't using them. So now they needed to use them.
but cognitive load was insane, right? And that's part of it, and I
Yeah.
think this kind of leads me to, because you and I could talk. I mean, we could easily do a special with Leader, everyone, just so you know. But one of the things that you speak about a lot of is the IOB. Yes, IOB, folks, if you've not heard of it. And it's something that I love, I love, love, love. I'm so geeky about it. So I saw your talks on this, but it's the Internet of Behavior. And I just wondered about that because, just linking in with what you've just said there, such a difficult square to circle, if you like, during that there's times everyone's doing different things. Everybody's frightened, and there's so much information. Do you want to just explain a little bit about your view on the internet of behavior, and then maybe we can talk a bit about how it might have panned out during the pandemic?
Sure. I'll actually give an example of myself on the internet of behavior and information. I started taking yoga classes online through YouTube, right? There was something that I needed to get active. I needed to do something. I was not an active YouTube user. I do have a daughter who, big YouTube, right? The kids grew up with YouTube. That's what they watch.
Kids
they
just
don't watch
YouTube.
TV, right? They just watch YouTube.
They can't imagine, Mike. They can't imagine. Why would I sit and wait for someone to put something on I might like, when everything that's ever been filmed is available?
Available there, right? A few years ago we bought a big TV, and I'm like, great, they're going to come watch it. No, they're still watching on their tablets or on their computer screens. So my behavior changed, as in I was watching YouTube. I was watching YouTubes every morning, doing my yoga workout before starting work. And then the information that I started getting on my email about yoga and all this information started popping up, right? So just that whole information and data that's out there now about me, that I'm a subscriber to a couple of YouTube channels and a couple of fitness channels, and now all of this pops up in the ads, and how is that influencing my behavior, and how much time am I spending looking at that and going down that direction. So that's kind of high level of more of a fitness. But if you dig a little bit deeper into IOB, and depending what sites and where people go, you can only imagine what information that they're getting, how they're being influenced, and taking that time to really think, does this really make sense to me? And should I be going down this path, right? Do I want to become a fitness guru? I don't think so. But, that type of thing.
It's so hard to stop that happening, because the minute that you do anything, we went to a place, there was a little vacation here in the UK just a couple of weeks ago, and we went to a place where there was exhibits, there was animals and things, and there's exhibits. And the next thing you know, my husband started getting taxidermy suggestions. You might like this site on taxidermy. And I said, that's really good, because the algorithm's completely screwed for you, because obviously thinks you're some sort of serial killer. Well, Lisa, look, just words of wisdom, because you've been in the role so long, you've seen so much of the industry. And as I say, you're across, your trustee of Osaka and of your own university that you went to. So what would you say to our audience? Because a lot of the people that are tuning into us right now are working a similar role. We've got CISOs and we've got aspiring CISOs. And I just wondered, 18 months into the pandemic, and just give us a little bit of your benefit of those years of experience.
I would say, understand, because we talk about security supporting the business and the organization, and really getting, if you have that opportunity to understand the people that make up organization, what they do and how they work with technology and security and the type of access that they have. So really understand, what do they need to do their job, and how can we support them in a safe and secure manner?
Absolutely brilliant advice. They're going to do it anyway, whether we're there or not. So we might as well get across it. Lisa, It's been amazing to have you as our lead guest today. We could talk to you forever on your experience of what you do, but thank you for now. And thank you. And just to say hello again to our lovely audience who are chatting away on the right-hand side of the tab. If you want to take part in the chat, you feel free. Ask me or my guest anything you like about the topics we're talking about, and we'll do our best to get to them all before we finish the show. Right now, I'd like to welcome to the show 2 more panelists. We are down 1 panelist today just due to an emergency, but we have got Sajid Naseem, who's the CISO at the New Jersey courts, and Todd Carroll, who's the CISO, amongst other things, at Cyber Angel. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I think we're just waiting on Sajid, who's having a few problems with connectivity, as is always the case with technology. Welcome to the show. Let's start with you then, Todd, while we wait to see if Sajid can reconnect. Great to have you on the show, and exciting to have you on the show. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do at Cyber Angel, and then talk to us a little bit about how you got there, because I can't wait to touch about this article.
Excellent. Yeah, so at Cybele Angel, first of all, Cybele Angel is a cybersecurity company. We're based, actually originated out of Paris, and now we're globally and obviously in offices in New York and London. But what we do is we help our clients find their data in the wild. So information that's shared, very timely with today and during definitely the pandemic, when information's shared with partners and third parties, we find a lot of information out there unsecured. And so we look and scan those areas where data is stored, data is shared, and those access to those data with exposure of credentials and et cetera like that. So at Cybele Angel, I am their CISO, but I'm also their VP of operations, as we are a fastly growing company, expanding quite a bit. But as Jenny, as you said, you can tell from my background, actually, I'm a retired FBI agent.
FBI agent, everyone, 20 plus years. So it's so exciting. So first of all, from a point of view of our whole topic, you can see things from the CISO and the vendor side, because you look up at, oh, there's Sajid. Welcome, Sajid. You managed to get the connection sorted out. I think quota 2020, you're on mute, sir. But yeah, so from a point of view of that, you see both sides of it, Todd, right? You see the vendor side, so kind of like, if you like, customer facing, but you're also sort of used to being the customer too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very unique experience and something that gives me a very interesting perspective as, I, of course, as a cybersecurity company, we have to protect ourselves as best as possible, because we have a lot of our client data that we have to secure, but also from the other point of view of seeing what the clients want and working with other CISOs, which actually helps me grow in my position as a younger CISO, as talking to my colleagues all the time about their wants and needs, challenges, risk, threats. It's actually puts me in a very good position. So,
well, we can't wait to touch about our topic later on. Sajid, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you are the CISO at the moment for New Jersey Courts. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that is and what exactly it is that you do there, what challenges you've got at the moment?
Yeah, so I work for the government, the state of New Jersey. However, the government is a big, vast place. Obviously, there's the federal government of the United States. I work for the state government. The court systems are peculiar in their own way. It almost runs like, in some ways, like a corporation. The courts of New Jersey have, basically, we're a big state, and all the courts are underneath the jurisdiction of the sort of Supreme Court of New Jersey. Okay. That's not always the case, depending on the states you go to. From a security point of view, that means that there's about 750 sites, physical sites.
Wow.
Court and so on and so forth. And the security of that is under, and we have about 13,000 employees and about 200,000 users that are government users that come into our system, including businesses like attorneys, lawyers, basically, and cops all across New Jersey. So it's a huge operation in terms of its, vastness. The one good part about it is that we have direct control over our courts from a networking security perspective. So that is important. So in terms of centralized policies and in terms of different conversations, there's some control there. That's on the technical side. On a very practical side, a year and a half ago, obviously, as the pandemic hit, the courts had never seen remote work. I don't want to say never seen, but essentially their entire operation was coming to a monolithic building, walking in.
That was the whole
lawyers. That was the whole thing, right?
Justice,
How
right?
do you take that remotely? It was the major question, right? And in terms of serving justice. So you went from walking in where attorneys are paying attention to people's reactions to going remote, where,
that guy was a
case out of the UK where we started seeing deep fakes on audio tapes and child custody cases and things like that, meaning the world that was never open to them became immediately, instantaneously opened. So that's the case. There's some law things that are critical in terms of running a remote operation, just in general. But number two, in terms of securing it, is when the court goes remote. One of the major things in criminal law type stuff is you have the right to confront or face your accuser. Basically, you can't do that remotely. That's not how the laws are written. So there's some real things you couldn't do remotely because they just couldn't. So we've basically been running a remote court all these months, and we've had some hybrid approaches where you can maybe the attorney and the accuser in the same room, and then other people are remote, and all this kinds of stuff has gone on that I think is probably here to stay for the future. But
Yeah,
that
sure.
also means you're dealing with just a very practical measure. As you and I are sitting in, I mean, this camera view is pretty good, but this is a virtual view. You know, there's all these questions that come when there's a virtual view versus a physical view. Now, I don't want to get too, I'm not saying we're living in a multi-universe with, alternate image, or I'm not going to like a physics explanation for this, but because the reality is we're remote, and that has a whole different ballgame in terms of accusing somebody of a crime, and that means we're bringing in all the electronic issues that one would deal with in the real, in technology to the court system. Huge deal. So we've fundamentally changed the way we operate.
That is a huge big deal. I mean, that gets to the heart of democracy and
it does.
Of sort of even society. Well, I love this topic. I love InfoSec because whenever we get our fabulous guests on, there's always this huge kind of history, and the scope of the job really hammers home when something like that. So thank you so much, Sajid. And actually, we're going to go to our article now, and it sort of touches a little bit. I think we're going to have 3 separate angles on this one, because our article today is from The Guardian, and it's about the fact that Lindsay Cameron, who's our chief executive of the National Cybersecurity Centre here in the UK, and this article is hot on the leads, of course, of our G7 summit, which saw even the president, given that our guests are US guests today, driving the beast down Cornwall's roads. I cannot imagine what it must have been like to see the beast driving down the road to Cornwall. For those of you who don't know, they are small roads, hard to take a Volvo down those roads. So that was amusing to all of us in Britain anyway, and seeing them sort of eating pasties and cream teas and things. It was great. But this article comes hot on the heels of that, and it's from our chief executive, NCSC, who said that for the vast majority of UK citizens and businesses, and for the vast majority of critical national infrastructure providers and government service providers, the primary key threat is not state actors, but cyber criminals. Now, I've got to come to Todd first, because finally you're allowed to speak somewhat on your opinion on this, Todd, after a long time, I'm sure. Yes. Not really able to. So initial thoughts on this.
Initial thoughts. So let's, the whole fact of ransomware, right? It's not anything new, right? It's been around forever, right? Okay. So what is the new thing that has taken us to this point? I have an opinion about maybe the line was crossed with the attack on the pipeline, right? Where now they're going after actually infrastructure in the US that really had a potential impact, right? The whole thing, though, but that this is not run by state actors is to me is crazy.
I mean, she stopped shy of saying it. She said, criminal hackers do not exist in a vacuum, but they are enabled and facilitated by states acting with impunity. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, isn't it? I mean,
let's hey, I spent a long time, most of my career was in national security, long time in cyber, counterintelligence, all go hands in hand. Worked a lot of time in terrorism also, and there's a lot of interesting things going on right now with a lot of declarations here in the US about designation of groups that are doing these types of attacks, which I think will bring in other authorities in the US government, right? So Title 18 allows the FBI to do certain things. There's other criminal law and federal law that when you designate things as certain designators, it allows other agencies within the U.S. government to actually get involved and to do operations. So there's some of that. I think a lot of it has to do with the pipeline attack. But hey, from day one, right, whether we're saying it's Russia, China, whatever, it's all, believe me, those countries, their hackers don't do anything without their governments being fully aware of what is going on. And hey, if they're not, they're working for the government during the day, and at night, they're making some money in their own pockets, or they're working for criminal organizations where the money really is nowadays. So, I'll call it what it is because they finally can. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that's really gets us across that. I'm sure most people wouldn't disagree. Let's go to Lida next. I mean, just very quickly on this, we don't want to talk too much on ransomware because we've done it for weeks and weeks. But what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I come from a different, growing up in the 80s and whatnot, and just what Todd said, I agree with Todd. Just from other CISOs and other people in security that I've spoken to in energy plants and whatnot, things are happening all the time, right? They're up 24/7 because of attacks that are happening. Just some did not get through. I think this is also the messaging to the people. This probably was the awakening for some because they couldn't get their gas, right?
Mm.
So it affected them. And other ransomware attacks like SolarWinds, for example, it didn't really mean a lot to the typical end user, right? What did that mean? How did it affect me? So this actually touched them. So again, it's I think it's the messaging and how does it affect the person, right? We're very much in, how does it affect me? Well, this actually affected them. So messaging and how does it affect you? When does it touch you? So.
I mean, she said daft things. I'm going to come to you, Sajid, in a minute and just look at how this kind of maybe ties up with the White House messages recently. But she said Cameron called for insurance companies to stop paying out ransoms because hackers are really members of banned terrorist groups, and said the anonymous cryptocurrencies often demanded, such as Bitcoin, should not facilitate suspicious transactions. It almost feels naive. It almost feels naive. I mean, Sajid, we've got a great question here from Tony, which says, how does this kind of parry up with the recent White House sort of open letters and advisories on zero trust and resilience? What do you think about government issuing these kind of open letters, these advisories, giving your position? Oops, just at the wrong time to lose Sajid. How does he come back?
In terms of federal governments and whatnot, so here's the deal, right? I mean, if you look at, I try to look at the ransomware as a threat that is not so. There's definitely a technological threat to it, but if you just look at the history of it, you have Microsoft that has vulnerabilities, Eternal Blue, then Deja Blue comes out, Blue Keep, Deja Blue, all this stuff going on, and then you have now ransomware that's as a service in the last few years. So you had back in 2017, you had the WannaCry, you had the Maersk attack, you had all kinds of, hospitals.
Yeah, like Todd said, it's not new. Yeah.
Now, if you look at the modern ransomware attack, you're talking about either basically over remote desktop vulnerabilities, or actually the way that they get in is through the admin accounts, right? That's how they get in. And then they install. If we actually had a ransomware attack last week in New York City Law Department, which again, what we hear is based off of somebody getting phished through an admin account, meaning mispractices of treating admin accounts as an example, right?
Yeah.
So now, no matter what regulation comes out or whatever you want to say, and obviously in the SolarWinds case and some of this other stuff, you had lots of compromises, lots of organizations with whatever you want to say, hygiene, bad hygiene, whatever you want to say, but those are the practical issues that are there. The guidances, I think, are starting to come out, but the reality of this, I think a lot of this topic is a leadership and management topic of how things work. So as an example, one of the things I did when the pandemic hit here, we've been taking our security seriously for a long time, clearly knowing that we're things can be bad for anybody, right? So the first thing when the pandemic hit, what we did, we spent more money in security. And I'm not saying that money isn't equal for doing good security.
No, but my God, it helps.
Management that was leadership that was dedicated to doing that, while they were cutting money from other places, they were dedicating to other parts. The point is that somebody is basically buying you. They're not just buying some buzzwords you're saying in some NIST documentation, right? So I would really say that the topic these days is, or always has been, is the leadership and management over your people. I'll give you another example of that's related to this. We've seen the Verizon breach report that comes out every year. 34% of stuff is misconfigurations, right? Meaning you couldn't follow the CIS benchmark, essentially, right? What does that mean? Somebody wasn't managing the people, right? That's what it really means, right?
And I see leads and not in.
Going on. So ransomwares are basically hitting bad relationships that are going on inside of organizations, because if you can get to the unpatched system, then to the admin account, then to the backup, that means somebody wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, this one can run and run, and we know that everybody cares about it, everyone's concerned about it, because it's going to keep going. I mean, I really feel towards the end of 2020, you all hoped that 2021 was going to be less eventful in many ways, And in security, we were wrong. So there we go. So thank you for your insights on that, guys. I'm going to take us to our topic now. And just to say to Sajid, I feel like I can see like some fabulous skyline, like the New York skyline or something, reflected in your glasses, which sounds very creepy. Every time you look at like I'm
that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yes, thank you, sir. So let's get on to the topic of the day, which is one that I really know sort of sets everybody in the community sort of on edge, which is this whole idea of the CISO or CISO vendor relationship and how that's really panning out. And I think I'm going to come to Todd first and sort of go around because Todd, this used to be thought of and is kind of joked about almost in the community as a very sort of inherently adversarial relationship, isn't it? I mean, that's the way it's like traditionally we're all bothered by vendors trying to sell us magic box solutions. From your position, which is pretty unique because you sort of see both sides of it, have we progressed as an industry on this one?
Okay. So 2.5 years ago, I was in the government where everybody in Chicago wanted to hear from me, right? And now I come to a vendor and no one wants to hear from me, right? So I wouldn't say it's that. So I'm fairly new to the relationship, but it is, at times can be difficult, right? I know there's a ton of noise and me wearing multiple hats at this company, believe me, my inbox every morning, my LinkedIn, everything else is just chock full of, because everybody thinks, oh, he's got the title, he has money, he wants to buy stuff. Frustrating part of that is that a lot of times it's stuff that I would never need, or it's actually competitors selling me the same thing that we actually offer. So no one's actually putting any thought behind it, which kind of makes me giggle and actually pass that to SDRs. And I say, you guys better be paying attention, right? You should be putting more thought behind this. But I think a lot of it is also on the vendor, and whether it's the sales teams or even when they sign and decline, it's a lot of it has to do with relationships, right? And I bring that definitely from my other days. Is I think it's yes, we're in the business of providing something, but we also have to answer the mail at the end of the day. And if we're not able to answer and help companies with what they're doing, then I think that is part of our problem. Is the vendor really needs to be listening also, besides just, as I call it, spraying and praying, send out 1,000 emails and maybe 5 people respond back, kind of
that
like
feels
fishing.
like when that happens, it's like fishing.
Right.
I was just going to say, it's just like, I feel like I'm being fished. I mean, Lisa, you must be on every list.
Yeah.
After 20 years in the business. I mean, what's your view on how this works? You're a relationships person.
Yeah, it is those emails are getting more creative. One was like like regarding like it was almost like it was a reply back to me of being out of the office with their information. I was like, whoa, okay, is this phishing or not phishing? But with the vendors, it's a big part is the relationship is understanding our what we do and help us with a solution. Like understand our story. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Does your solution fit or not? So come with a solution and not having me try to get what we do into what you're selling. And so I think it starts with that initial call. There have been more Zoom calls now with some vendors, and I felt ambushed one time because there was about 7 people on the call with me, and I thought it was just an intro. Like I thought it was just going to be the person that I was sharing the email with, that we were going to talk. They were going to understand what I was looking for. They were going to tell me about their product and kind of go from there. Instead, it was 7 on a Zoom call, all basically like, well, what do you do? And I felt like I was running it. And when I had questions, I'm like, I'd really like to, can you maybe give me a screenshot or show me none of that. No. It was kind of just this of us talking, and I'm like, okay, and they're like sending emails like this. Now after that, well, when can we meet? When can we do this? When can we do this? When can we close? And it's like, no, we're not moving any farther. But it's understanding what we do and building that relationship. That's important. Listen to my story and tell me how your product fits. And if it doesn't fit, then we can both walk away and not waste anybody else's time, right? And move on.
Sajid, how about yourself? Are you bombarded by vendors you don't want, or how's it work?
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? And we're all working in a place where the vendors got to do business. I got to do business. We cannot work without vendors. They cannot work without us, right? So we have some sort of symbiotic relationship there. So the question is, how do we fit the thing? I'll give you an example of what does basically work. If you have a vendor that sells you stuff and just disappears on you, it looks really bad, right? You're not going to really be thinking about them. And then there's vendors that are calling you 24 hours a day. You're like, hey, dude, I don't have that much time, right, to deal with this, right? So you have that extreme. And then the second thing is, then there's some vendors that will set up a meeting with you every week to check in and so on and so forth. If you can size that meeting to times and what things and that you want, that could really be beneficial in a way, because because times, then you catch them at that specific time to get something. If you're doing some complicated network security project, and you are now like every week meeting with them at that time, makes some sense, right? Maybe, right? So I would really say the vendors got to do work towards not just selling stuff but maintaining stuff, because next time the cycle comes around, I might just drop you for somebody else.
I mean, can I just do a little reminder? Thank you for that, guys. Let's just do this. And gals, I always say guys, and I get told not to say that, even though I am in fact a gal. If we do want to hear from you today, so our audience today, you are very quiet for. I mean, I'm sure that's just because you listen to our awesome panel, but we could do some more comments and questions. Otherwise, I am not going to be able to award a Tice mug today. So let's have some questions and comments from the audience for our fabulous panel. Lots that interesting angles on things from the panel today. So let's hear from you. I feel like whenever we talk about this, as I sort of said yesterday, not prep, I'm from a procurement background, and I teach this. And one of the things that I always worry about is that I don't know whether CISOs and just technical people generally, there's degree level courses in how to manage and vendors and vendor relationships. And I'm just wondering from the audience as well as from the panel, I mean, do you think that it's part of the role that we're not ready for a lot of the time, that no one's really taught us that there's a way that we prioritize vendors, there's a way we prioritize requirements? And maybe come to Leader first, because I know that you did a short stint.
A short stint in procurement.
A short stint in procurement. So what's your view on that? Because it is a big deal. Not all vendors are created equal, and neither are all customers, right?
Right. Well, I've actually built a relationship with our procurement vendor management team, because they're the experts, right? They deal with vendors all the time. And I know some, our procurement manager, she'll be like, send them my way. If I get information, send them her way. And then we'll walk through the requirements of what we're looking at, so she can be working with them, and then not just bombarding me, like work through the process, because she's the expert. She's the SME on that. And so she's taught me a little bit, secrets that she does in how she deals with vendors, and just that process. And when we get to a contract, what we're asking for is what are they providing, really getting what we want. And like Sajid just mentioned, some of the successful vendors that I see now that we have, that, they're not running away. We've actually have quarterly meetings with them, and we're talking about their roadmap and sharing our information that they've actually now have incorporated, because we're the users, we're the consumers of this. We are using their product, and this is how it's being used in the real world, right? So giving that feedback. I was with a call with another vendor the other day, and they're up with a new product, and it was techno speak in the console. And I said, you may not have a technical person. Like, that doesn't mean using that technical speak to your average end user or your intern. It may not make sense to them. So it needs to make sense. So they made that change to make it more the usability, right? For who's going to be on that console, who's going to be that end user. So I've seen that open up a little bit more with vendors that we now have, is that relationship management, is understanding where we're coming from, understanding where they're coming from, so we can get to a better solution.
It matters so much, I think, doesn't it, Todd? It matters to, some customers. I mean, I know you're not going to comment this, but I know some customers are easier to deal with and are open to suggestions, and others are not. And then we've got a great comment here from John T, who's a regular audience member. Hi, John T, who says, I'm not a vendor, but it's really common for me to see InfoSec leaders on LinkedIn talk about how they know which product they want. And that's not just how it works. It feels a bit unfair in the vendors, although putting an unwanted calendar invite in the calendar is poor form. I mean, that's like U2. Remember when U2 dropped all their songs into iTunes, and suddenly your phone had U2 on it? I like U2, but I felt that was a bit invasive. Todd, what's your thought on that? Is it a bit unfair on the vendors sometimes? Are they trying to?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's It is really, there's a lot of noise out there, right? I think about the first time I went to RSA a couple of years ago, and I've gone to RSA before as a speaker with the government, right? So it's different. But that first time as a vendor, you will come down that escalator, if anybody's been out there, Moscone Center, and you see just the vast sea of vendors, and you're like, oh my God, how is somebody going to find us to go, hey, that's who I need? So there has to be a conversation, right? And part of it is also that to the second point, right? The different techniques to get the attention. And I really don't like that, because actually I had two today where I'm like, where do these calendar invites come from? You know, I'm like, I don't know this, and that's not really a poor form, but people are getting very creative and having the conversation. And I know even in our company is, so it is, it's that whole balance between how do you find potentially what you don't know that's out there, that maybe this is a different technology that's out there that does something, versus the big vendors that have been out there forever, and are they changing their ways to address today's challenges? I mean, that's part of the whole thing. And if I knew the answer, I wouldn't I'd be writing books on that. But it is a huge challenge, and sometimes we run into that. Hey, we can recreate that. I'm like, it took 8 years to develop this. I highly doubt it. Or, I'll let you know when I'm looking for that. And it's hard. There's just so many different technologies that are out there, and different vendors, and getting through to the ones that are, probably can answer what you absolutely need is not easy without having a lot of those discussions.
No, it's not. I mean, Sajid, what does good look like for you? What does a great vendor approach look like for you? What gets around?
So I mean, it's a combination of a lot of what's being said, but I mean, I think, obviously psychologically everybody buys things for different reasons. There was a report out of Gartner, and it's probably true on a yearly basis, that CEOs are very unhappy with CIOs and technical people because they just buy toys. And I get it. I take my kid there to Toys R Us, which is defunct now, and they just want to buy everything on the thing there. So again, buying is, psychologically satisfying in some way, right? But then there's different people for different things, right? So what I look for, it depends on the area that I'm looking for. Sometimes I'm just trying to get something done, and I know something is an industry leader, and I just don't have time I just need to plug that problem, right? Simple as that, right? Simple as that. Then the other thing is that I'm getting into a more strategic, I don't say relationship, but more things. I just need more from the vendor, like in terms of their analysts, in terms of what they're bringing to the table, and, lack of arrogance, I'm looking for some very human things from them to be able to do that. And, that's where the relationship starts. So, sometimes you can have a vendor that's like huge, and you've heard of them, all of a sudden the person they give you really sucks, the person they give you is terrible. I'm like, dude, I'm not buying X company, I'm buying that analyst, or I'm buying that person, right? So to me, it's those very human things, like, is this person dedicated? I'm working 24 hours a day, I haven't slept in 5 years. So are you giving me the same thing back? And if you're on PTO all the time and I have a different relationship, then give me the analyst that isn't, right? So very factors like that to me play a huge role in my mind in terms of picking the right vendor, even though that's related. It's almost like the same thing when you say that you don't leave a job, you leave your manager, right? I mean, you could be working.
People leave people. They don't leave jobs. Mm-hmm. And it's true in the vendor relationship. We've got some great comments there from Sashi. We've got some great comments coming up on here. We've got John, who is a regular on the show, John Nair, saying, I'm one of the people on LinkedIn who changed their profile to say vendors don't bother. This is a little bit harsh. From Liza saying, when do you, and these are quick fire because we're just about time's up, but just very quickly, perhaps let's go to Leisure on this one. When do you as CISO see value in vendor and partner relationships? How is it best to approach you, leader, with a product that's new that they know? How is it best to approach you? Very quickly.
The relationship. I actually like it when I understand the person and not that sales pitch. Not that they're reading off their script, but getting for me to know who they are a little bit and why they believe in their product and go off script. I think that's the best way. That's when I have that conversation.
And so Jude's nodding, but I mean, I'm thinking we've got to give them a little doorway in to even get there and give you that kind of little bit of a CV. Daniela, what do most vendors share if they Danielle, if they can't take a hint, if people don't answer your cold call on the second or a fifth time, we don't want to talk to you. Or a 10th LinkedIn message. We've got a great question coming in from Jonty. Just, I think, to finish this before I get your very quick final thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. But how often this to me is a brilliant question, Jonty, because we all talk about being people orientated to a certain degree. We acknowledge the job can't be done without good communication. But Jonty's question, and I'm going to come to Tom first, how often do they feed back to potential vendors on the use of language or marketing copy? How often do we tell them why we don't respond? Todd?
Wow.
It's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. And, and it's part of our, the challenge, and the challenges that we have as a vendor, right? I'll speak from the vendor point of view, is that, we need to listen as much as we possibly can. We need to share, and we do that. Like you said, we use the quarterly, right? How much is too much? How much you want to hear from the vendor? How much you want to be, hear from the vendor, and make sure that there's that human touch, and capability. So our use of technology mixed with a human touch and ability to interact, but we share that roadmap. We absolutely do share our roadmap with our customers, because we want to stay up on what their challenges are, right? Mm-hmm. If not, we're not going to be around very long.
Someone's
right?
going to say 10th time and ignore you, right? Like they said there.
Right, exactly.
Sajid,
absolutely.
I mean, Sajid, what would it take for you to give someone feedback on their approach?
On what, Jenny?
On their approach to you. So Jonty's question was, how often do we feedback to vendors on how they approach us? I mean, what would get them through the door?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's gonna depend. Selling is probably a very complicated topic. That's why certainly I'm not good at it, and you guys are better than me. So I'm not good at selling stuff. But I think it's a very there's introverts, there's extroverts, there's life experience, there's all this stuff that's going on when you're selling something. So it's really complicated, I think, on some level. Like me, I'm just tired and haven't slept. So talk to me less and give me more specific information would be helpful.
So I would say that's really clever, because that's adapting to the other person. And that's what we'd say in good communication anyway. We'd certainly say, read the other person, try and work out what they want and give them it.
Yeah, there's people that can't understand me at all. And there's some people that get me like this. So what's the difference? They're paying attention, I would imagine.
So I think, well, it's true. So, we are about at the end of our time. This is an amazing panel today. I've really loved talking to you guys on this topic. Such different backgrounds and points of view. It's been amazing. Let's just get one or two sentences, because we really are at the edge of just our final thoughts on this CISO vendor relationship. Maybe if I go to leader first, what are your final thoughts on all of this?
Know what you want to get, understand what you're looking for, what solution that you need in your organization. Yeah, really, that was it. And then reach out to those vendors.
I say as somebody, I run my own company, and I always say, if I get a customer, potential customer, just know what they want. Very difficult for me to make them happy. Let's go to Sajid next.
Well, Lita, right? That's your name?
Yes,
Lita?
correct.
Okay,
yep.
I just want to make sure I get it right. But so what Lita said is correct. You got to know what you want, right? Mm-hmm. And that's important. And sometimes I see vendor people come into a meeting and they're not knowing what they want, and they're asking the vendor for stuff. I'm like, dude, get a clue here, right? Because you're wasting everybody else's time when you don't know what you want. And it's okay to have exploratory discussion. Don't have it with me there, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's okay. Or do some research. So I think that's an important factor. And in terms of vendors, one of the things that annoys me, so let's put it that way, is if the vendor comes in kind of basically telling me what to do. I'm like, dude, you're not paying attention to anything that I'm facing over here. I got people not following CRM benchmarks. I got ransomware attacks. I got a million things. And you're giving me everything. This is perfect. Do it this way. And everybody else does it this way. You know what? You still didn't tell me what I want to hear, how I should do it. You know what I'm saying? How I should do it. You're talking about every other woman or every other person. And I'm talking about me. And that's a problem, because I think they need to understand what you're dealing with. And this is a matter of how they approach. This is a critical piece of it. I can immediately turn off vendors in a second the moment that they take the wrong approach, because psychologically they're not helping me,
Yeah, absolutely. Todd, we need to finish straight away, more or less, but it's about meeting objectives, I'd imagine, the customer objective. What's your final thoughts on this one?
Final thoughts, I agree completely, but here's the other thing. When you do run up against a vendor, be open with communication about your needs, right? And say, listen, they're humans. They're on the other side. They're trying to make a living. Just say, listen, this is my challenge. This, and this can you meet that challenge? And if can, let's have a conversation. If not, no hard feelings. We'll talk to you some other time.
Yeah, but Todd, the flip side of that is that when you do that, they keep calling you for something else. Okay.
No.
So
yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying? So
I can't take it. You know, I can only speak.
Yeah, but your point is valid. Your point is valid that the people who are purchasing should be respectful towards the vendor because you know that they're spending time coming in, all that. I think that point is well taken.
Yeah, and they absolutely, the vendor then needs to listen and say, listen, they're not in the mood, or they don't have that need right now. Let's move on to the other 10,000 companies that are out there.
Absolutely. And I think what we're seeing here is that there's a balance on both sides, and you both do better on both sides, I think, sometimes with those approaches, and certainly trying to solve some of those mutual challenges. We are out of time and could have gone on for much longer, but for today, I want to award the teissTalk mug to John T because there was some cracking comments, and that was a brilliant question. So thank you, John T. We will be on to you to receive your teissTalk mug. But for now, let me say thank you to my fabulous panel, to Lida Muller, to Sajid Nassim, and to Todd Carroll, and to Cybele Angel, without whom we wouldn't have had the show because they've been our fantastic sponsors for today. And to you, the teissTalk audience, who have helped us get our award for Best Up and Coming Podcast. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again on Thursday for Jeff's show. Goodbye.
Be safe, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.